Tucson's getting found too.
Well,
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Folks coming from
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I almost don't want to talk about it because I don't want more people to come. By the way, we're talking live now with you on the podcast. So I have Jeff Mitchell on here. We're discussing Bend, Oregon, which he lives in part-time, and then Phoenix part-time, or Scottsdale probably, actually, right? Is it Scottsdale or is it Phoenix?
It's Paradise Valley.
Oh, sorry. That's an important one. That's the
Some
most...
people think so.
Well, yeah, exactly. I just saw an article on it, like the most expensive suburb or little city or whatever.
It's one of them
in Phoenix. Yeah,
yes.
No, it's a great Phoenix. Paradise Valley is really wonderful. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is, and I hope, Mark, that you and I have known each other for a long time. I hope
27 years.
Is that how long it's been? When you come up sometime, you'll let me know you're coming and come to the house.
Yeah, I'd like to. You're probably not that far from Ed Mel's place.
We're 10 minutes from Ed.
Yeah. Who I go to see try to make on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So, but I was saying about Tucson, as far as Tucson's coming, and Phoenix too, and all these places, when you look at where in America can you live that you don't have forest fires, hurricanes, tornadoes, it's warm almost all the time of the year. You're limited to a very few places, really. Las Vegas, Phoenix, Tucson, Albuquerque, okay, I'm done. Where else? There really aren't.
On almost a daily basis, I look around and I say to Janet, we are so fortunate. And, Phoenix Valley is 3.5 million people.
No, it's huge.
But PV is, there's still lots of nature.
Yeah.
I have coyotes come through. I have...
they have those in New
Javelina.
York, too, by the way. New York City.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so
Javelina come and drink the bird water and eat the leaves off the cactus. And
yeah, it reminds me of Tucson, that area does.
Yeah.
And they have the little mountain there and things.
Yeah.
No, there is something about it.
Yeah.
And that's why it's the most expensive place in Phoenix to live.
Yeah.
So
yes, it is. Yeah.
So let's just kind of go from the beginning with you, Jeff, because I've known you, like we said, 27 years, but I don't know the whole story. I don't know where you grew up. I know bits and pieces. I know there's some really interesting parts of your career, including military service, like myself. But where did you grow up?
Tucson.
Yeah. I thought that was right, but
yes,
didn't know for sure.
Born in the East. My father was from Boston. My mother was from Manhattan. And they were divorced when I was about 5.5. My mother was old style secretary. Took shorthand, could type 1,000 words a minute, that sort of thing. And she took me after the divorce, and we moved to Benson.
Why Benson?
Well, she took a job at the Apache powder plant outside of town, and was there for about a year and a half. A Hispanic family took care of me, Armida Romero. Wonderful, wonderful memories. And then she took a job at the University of Arizona in the Aggie building. Mm-hmm. We moved to Tucson. I grew up on Park Avenue in Dreckman, right close to, that's all. It used to be a wonderful little small houses. And
it still is, I think, in that area, actually.
It is. So primarily rented to students now.
And so when you were born, your mom was from Manhattan, your dad from West Boston?
Yes.
Where were they living when they were still married?
It's very interesting, Mark. I have very little history of it, memory of the history. And I'm not sure why.
Trauma, maybe?
There probably was some unpleasantness that I've blocked out. But either in Manhattan or across the Hudson in New Jersey. That's where they would have been living.
Yeah, because I think of this, two people that are living in big major cities in America, that they get a divorce and your mom goes as far away as possible in a lot of respects to a place that's completely different than that.
Well, that was extreme.
Extreme.
Yeah, and you're right. My uncle, her twin brother, was a mining engineer in Torreon, Mexico. And he said to my mother early on, bring Jeff to Mexico, get back on your feet. And so we were there. We weren't there long, maybe a half year. And then she gravitated from Mexico.
I see.
Up to Arizona.
I see. So that's the deal. She went to family and was in Mexico, and then that allowed her to move on once she got through whatever trauma she was dealing with. Because that was a big deal to get a divorce in those days, too.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. And then she raising a young boy alone out in the area that she didn't know at all. But I have wonderful memories of it.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure she probably tried to make it wonderful, too.
Yeah.
And did she ever remarry or you have any other siblings?
No other siblings. She never remarried. I remember there was a rancher, a cowboy from Wilcox that used to come see her, and I asked her about that and why they didn't get married, and she was quiet for a moment or two and said, I don't like the way he treats you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you were her everything, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And did you keep a relationship with your father at all?
I saw him very little. He was not a part of my life at all. He decided he remarried, and the woman he married said to him, as he has told me, or did, you need to get in touch with Jeff and establish a relationship, which he did when I was about the end of high school. And that was it. He fell in love with the West, decided that he would retire and move to Green Valley, had bought a house, and he and Lil, his new wife, were packing up to go. He got up to walk across the living room and fell over, and his body was full of cancer, and lasted 2 weeks. So he never made it.
Yeah, you wonder if he knew something was cooking, and that's why he was coming to Green Valley.
Don't know.
A lot of people who have cancer like that, they know something's wrong, and often they don't get seen because they don't want to have it.
Oh, that's interesting.
They don't want to.
You would be aware of that.
Oh, I used to see it. It'd come in end-stage cancer and never been seen, and they know something's wrong, but they don't want to confront it.
Yeah.
Right. So, but maybe if I move to Green Valley and see my son and all that, maybe there's something. I don't know. That's me, complete speculation on my part. But one has to wonder. So, when you're growing up in Tucson, what was this kind of the early, when you're in, let's say, kind of junior high school, kind of the early 60s time frame, late 50s, early 60s?
It was earlier. I went to University Heights grade school on Park Avenue, and then Mansfield Junior High, and then Tucson High, and graduated from Tucson High in 59.
59. Yeah, well, you look so young. It's just...
Yeah, right.
Well, it's true.
Went in the Marine Corps right out of high school.
So why did you do that when it's 1959, and what was it that you said, okay, this is where I need to go?
Because I knew I was not a good student, and I realized that it would be wrong to try to just go on to school, and it was a great challenge. turned out that it was a great experience for me. I was in a MAX outfit, Marine Air Control Squadron, went straight to the Philippine Islands, from Philippine Islands to Japan, over a year in Japan. And interestingly, Mark, in retrospect now, the early Japanese experience was very enlightening from an aesthetic point of view. That culture, everything about it.
Yeah, lots of in beauty, and art is taken seriously, and all that.
Right down to the way candies are wrapped.
Yeah, everything. To the rock in front of your house.
Yeah.
And so before you go to the Marine Corps, were you interested in art at all? Were you drawing or making art or doing any of that kind of stuff?
No.
What were your interests when you were in?
Athletics.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And what kind of things were you doing?
Football and track.
Yeah.
Pole vaulted and distance running.
And were you good at it?
Average.
Yeah.
I wasn't great. I was not a good pole vaulter.
Nobody is. I tried. It's high school too. Yeah, very hard. Wonderful sport though.
Yeah.
And so you go to the Marine Corps. You're an enlisted guy, I assume, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you end up in Japan, Okinawa.
No. Well, after boot camp was school.
Yeah.
For the radar.
Yes.
And that then I was sent to the Philippine Islands to be with a MAX outfit down there.
Okay.
And I loved it down there. I mean, you're 19 years old and
right.
Living on the beach, really. We lived in World War II Quonset huts, and, it was visited Corregidor, and where MacArthur had gone into the cave and made his statement, "I will return."
Right.
Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah,
dressed
he did.
Dressed in all his finest, none of it military issue.
Yeah. I remember one, just a little side story that you would appreciate. We lived in these Quonset huts that were from the war, and pygmies still had free run on the base, because during the war, when the Japanese had captured people and were taking them on a march, the pygmies, we were told, and in Marine Corps boot camp we were told, that they would hide and shoot poison darts at the Japanese guards.
Yeah.
And they were still honored with able to come in, and we frequently would come back from some detail of some sort, and there'd be a guy with his bow and arrow sleeping on our cot.
Oh, wow.
They would, and I had a wonderful set of bow and arrows that I have no idea where it drifted off to. I don't have it any longer. I wish I did.
Did they talk about at that time the Bataan Death March?
Yes.
When you were there, I would think.
Yes.
I actually had one patient that survived that.
Is that right?
Yeah, in the military, a retired guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he still couldn't talk about it. And he was still having problems from it. He's probably at that time in late 70s or so.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Bad.
Don't get over that.
No, you don't get over that.
No.
Ever. You can't. You just try to deal with life, I think. So you do that for 4 years? Are you active?
4.
4, yep.
And 2 years inactive.
Yep.
When I came back, went right to the U of A, and went through undergraduate in 3 years, and then went to New York, studied design.
So when you're in U of A, what was your major? What were you getting your degree
I
in?
started in business, took a design class in the art school, and said, "This is it. I want to do this."
Isn't that interesting how you had never really had any interest in art or anything, or maybe it just wasn't exposure.
Yeah.
And then you take one class and you're like 22 or 23 or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And went to the head of the art department, and he said, "No, don't do that. You can't make." I remember this clearly. You'll never make a living if you just study art. So I took a minor in business, and I loved being in the art department. And then after going to New York, went to Pratt.
The Pratt School of Design?
Yes, in Brooklyn. I worked for a design firm, Ken Sacco Associates. It was a very small group that worked for all great companies. And one of the other design firms we did work for, the guy was head of the design department at Pratt, and he said, "I'd like you to come to school. I'll give you a full ride if you do it." And Ken Sacco let me go for a year, and then I went back to them when I graduated.
And and when you say you went back to them, where were
Ken Sacco Associates, right in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Yeah, at that point, 54th Street.
So that had to be an eye-opener too, right?
You bet.
Because you were
5 years in Manhattan.
you've seen the Philippines, you've seen the world to some extent, but you haven't seen art or been exposed to Manhattan,
Right.
especially in.
Right.
And what was that like? That must have been
Well, it was
life-changing,
wonderful.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And lived in a brownstone, fourth floor walk-up on at the corner of 80th and Madison, 1 block from the Met. So you know what's there. I mean, the Guggenheim is there, the Met's there. Madison Avenue at that time was galleries, and it was terribly exciting 5 years.
Yeah. And so what years were you there?
You know, Mark, it was 80s.
Was it that late or earlier?
Yeah,
because you graduated,
or was it? 80s?
Yeah, because you graduate high school in '59, right? And you spend 4 years in the
Marine Corps.
Yeah, so that's like 63,
No,
and
you're
then
right.
another 3
You're
years.
right. No.
So 66. So it's kind of late 60s.
Late
really.
60s or 70.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, right in that time frame. And the Vietnam War is going on now.
That's right.
And do you remember that whole thing when you're in New York? And what was your take on that, being an ex-Marine?
Yeah, no, I have no strong memory of that.
Yeah. Well, you had served your country, so you knew you probably weren't going back.
Well, there was always a chance that you'd
you
be
could.
called up.
Oh, I understand that. I
Yeah.
remember feeling that when I was doing my residency, that I might get called back into the Iraq War. But so you didn't really, one way or the other, have, this is something I have strong feelings about on them.
I must have, Mark, but it doesn't. It hasn't stayed with me. I don't remember any strong feelings at the time.
Yeah.
I have to say there are a lot of things that I look back on now, and Janet will ask me, "Well, what do you think?" And I say, "Gosh, you know, I don't even remember that."
Yeah. Well, you're a little older too, and I think that makes a difference too. Even though it's only, maybe 8 years or so, you're a little further along in your life, and the people that probably aren't getting drafted and being sent to New York,
Right.
to Vietnam.
That's right.
It's the people that are 17, 18, 19,
That's
20,
right.
21, and you're older than that. So I can see that. What about the music scene? That was going on as well. Was that of any?
Well, I've always liked music, but I don't remember it being.
Yeah, because Woodstock would have been going on
That's right.
while you were in Manhattan.
Yeah.
So you didn't go, I'm going over there? It's surprising. I've interviewed a lot of people that actually have gone or were there.
Oh, is that right?
At that time, yeah.
Yeah.
So so you're in New York and you stay there for 5 years?
5 years.
And so then what happens?
I decided both of my children, Noelle, my daughter, and Morgan, my son, were born there. Morgan was born in New York City Hospital, and I thought, I don't want the kids to grow up here.
Yeah.
And by then I was missing the West. And so came back to Tucson, took a job working construction, and fell off a building into bricks, a pile of bricks that had been a wall and blown down in a monsoon, and really had a bit of a head injury. Was taken to the U of A medical school, which was just opening at the time. And somehow, through talking to the docs and their knowing my background, was hired as chief medical artist at the medical center. And was there for a couple of years.
And what does that job entail?
First thing I did was hire a good medical artist.
Yeah, I was going to say,
No,
you're not
because
you're not an artist.
No, but a lot of that, as you know, is done with photography. So I was basically doing what I did in New York, a lot of graphic design for brochures for the hospital, and I remember some of the most important ones were for the surgery department.
Yeah.
Trying to think of the head of surgery at the time. And anyway, that was for about 2 years. And the director of the art museum on campus was a fellow by the name of Bill Stedman. And he had known me from undergraduate school and said, he came to me, asked me to have lunch with him, and he said, I'd like to have an assistant director. If I can create the position, would you take it? And I said, I would love to come and work at the museum. And that happened very quickly.
And so that would have been kind of early, mid-'70s time frame?
Yeah, I guess so. I should have, knowing I'd be chatting with you, I should have gone back and looked at these dates.
Yeah, but somewhere in that time frame, probably.
Yeah.
You have 2 young kids.
Yeah.
And how old are they?
Now, today?
No, then.
They would have been Morgan. Morgan is the younger, and Morgan at that time would have been 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And Noelle
would
have been 8 and 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you take this director, they're
assistant director,
but they're able to make it.
Yes.
And this is the art museum in the university.
On campus.
Yeah, which actually has some amazing art.
They have some wonderful art. They do. Most of it's in the vault.
Yeah, it is. And I'm very interested to hear about that because, let's just talk about that. So you're an assistant director for that. At that point, did you come across Dixon? Because Edith Hamlin had donated all those 1900 portraits. Or do you remember if that was when that came in? Because you would have been exposed to all the stuff, and they do have all those, Mojave pieces from the turn of the century.
I don't recall having a strong connection to Dixon at that time. I've always been interested in modern art, and that museum has. I'll tell you one painting they have that I still go back to look at is they have a Morandi, who is one of my all-time favorites of any painter at any time in history, and they had lots of They had early Kandinsky,
Yeah.
1910.
Yeah, we have an O'Keefe, a Rothko,
yeah.
a de Kooning.
The de Kooning was the one
Was
that
still
was
there?
stolen.
Was it still there when you were there?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Yes, it was.
They got it back, by the way. You
Yes,
probably know that,
it's an interesting story, isn't it?
Yes, it is very much so.
Yeah.
So how long did you stay in that position?
5 years.
Yeah, a long time.
5 years, and I heard of a job opening at the Millicent Rogers Museum in Taos.
Right.
And I mentioned it to Bill Stedman, my boss, the director, and he said, "Go for it, Jeff." And the board for the museum were all from Manhattan, and the Millicent Rogers family. They were, at that time of year, they would have been out on Long Island and in Manhattan. And he said, apply, and I did, and was asked to go back and interview, and Bill was very kind at the time. He said, if you go back, he said, I know I'll lose you because they'll want to keep you.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, he was very kind, and I took that job. It was a very exciting job to be in Taos. We had, prior to that, bought a couple-acre lot just as you're coming into Taos, and I'd always had a dream of moving there and painting. During all this, I always painted.
Okay, when did that start? When did you start painting? Were you?
When I was at the U of A Museum of Art, I turned the garage. We lived on 8th Street, between 8th Street, 6th Avenue, and Country Club, turned the garage into a studio and was doing large geometric modern paintings. And I had started doing some of that. It was different. It wasn't, at that time it became three-dimensional, but I was doing geometric paintings, and they let me do them in undergraduate school when I was a student at the U of A. Even though the classes might not have been doing that, for some reason the teachers, because you were older and for whatever the reason was, I was given a great deal of freedom to do pretty much what I wanted.
And were you trying to sell any of those art or find representation?
Yes, showed with the Harlans. You remember the Harlans? They are in real estate now and are still here. They had a very fine modern gallery.
In Tucson.
Yeah, yes.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard of them.
On Speedway.
How interesting. And so, do you think things have been different? You could have just been an artist?
I gave that a great deal of thought, Mark, and decided I liked the business aspect of it as well as painting. Yeah. And I still keep a studio at the house now.
And do you still create?
Yes.
Nice.
And when I go to Bend in the summer, when we go to Bend in the summer, I take watercolors. I like quick watercolors.
And do you just try to sell any of yours or have representations just for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, at this point.
And friends.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you go to Taos. It's kind of maybe been a dream of yours because you already have land there. Clearly you were thinking of it.
Yeah.
And you're the museum director at the Millicent Rogers?
Yes.
I mean, you've been assistant director for 5 years. You know what's required, but it's still not the same as being the person that gets all the buck stops here.
At the Millicent Rogers.
Yes.
Yes, and it was the first person to be truly a director. The Dixie Yapel and John were assistants to Millicent when she was alive, and they sort of inherited paying attention to those objects and maintaining the rooms and so on and so forth. It was pretty mom and pop at that point.
Yeah, what a collection though, still.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Their weaving collection.
Everything, their kachinas, their silverwork, their
Yes.
Hispanic material.
Yes.
You know, I don't think they probably had the Maria collection at that point.
They
right?
did not.
Yeah,
I think,
came later.
didn't Denny Lyon, wasn't he a part of the Maria collection
Well,
to them?
it wouldn't surprise me. I know that Anita Day ended up giving her collection. The Day family had basically, it all came up there, and you know that would have been after. That was probably in the 90s, early 90s, maybe.
Yes, later.
Yeah, but it's it's one of the great Maria collections, actually. It is the great Maria collection, better than anywhere else, in fact. So anybody who hasn't been there, I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
And so you're learning new things. You're taking new responsibilities, and you're probably actually. This is when you probably get to be exposed to things like the Taos Founders.
Yes, and one of the things that I did immediately was the board for the museum at that time was basically the Ramos family.
Yes.
And a couple other people. And I felt here we were in a Hispanic and Native American town, and there weren't either on the board. So the first thing I did was have I had Tony Reyna. Did you ever know Tony?
I know that
he
name.
was governor of the Pueblo at the time, come on the board. And the Hispanic woman was I've forgotten her name now. She was a retired teacher from Taos, had retired, taught in California, came back to Taos, and began building the board and having them. Interesting aside, I'll mention this if I may, because I don't want to forget it. Fritz Scholder had a house up there at the time. No one knew about it. He had a house in Scottsdale, and he had a house in Ranchos, down south of Santa Fe. And not Ranchos. What's the town south of Santa Fe? Down by
La Cienega, maybe?
down in that area.
Yeah.
He had
Los Andrinas area.
Galisteo.
Galisteo.
He was in Galisteo, but he kept a little adobe up in Taos, where he was so popular at the time.
This is kind of the
This would have
80s,
been
early
80s, early 80s, and he would go up there to hide and paint and just meditate. And he'd come to the museum, and I would take things out of the showcases. They were all in glass cases,
Right.
And we'd take them out on the lawn, and he'd sketch them and take photographs of them. And now I see so many of those paintings that he was doing at the time. And I remember Fritz saying at the time, "Jeff, I don't know how you live up here." And I said, what are you talking about? He said, "That mountain is so strong that I can't sleep for 2 nights." He said, "I will pace the floor for 2 nights before I get tired enough that I can sleep through a night up here."
I get that.
Yeah.
I feel that with Mauna Kea in Hawaii.
Do you?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I know it and believe it as well. And I mentioned it to Tony Reyna over lunch once, the man I mentioned that's on the board, and said, "Tony, Anglos always say it's because of your culture and the Pueblo being right under the mountain." And he waited for about 30 seconds and leaned across the table and he said, "Jeff, why do you think our ancestors came here in the first place?"
Yeah, the mountain pulled them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of guy was Fritz Scholder? I mean, I've had lots of people who knew him. I knew him, actually. He used to come and see my Dixon stuff, but I didn't really know him intimately.
Well, my experience with him was he was a regular guy.
Yeah, mine too, actually.
Yeah, he didn't have to be on
Right.
the way he would at an opening and
Right.
so forth. No, he was a super guy. And appreciative and fun and
Yeah.
yeah.
And clearly sensitive to certain things as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting to think of him in those terms of being such a superstar at that time that he had to literally go up to hide from, the Santa Fe crowd and probably even the Phoenix crowd for that matter.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting. So how long do you stay at Millicent Rogers?
5 years.
I can just put everything in 5-year increments.
Yeah, Janet has pointed that out to me. 5 years was divorced. I was divorced in Taos. I have a love-hate relationship with Taos because of that. I had brought my mother up from Green Valley to be there. She died in the Taos hospital at about the same time. And I then, because of the divorce, because of everything, my life just being turned upside down in every way, got my pickup and drove across country, slept in cornfields and headed for and ultimately getting to Maine because my family had had time in Maine. The New York part of the family, not my dad. My mother, that's the Brown side of Mitchell Brown. My mother's maiden name was Brown. And they had a home in South Bristol. And I decided I wanted to get in touch with those roots. I took a class at in Bath, Maine, Shelter Institute. It was about a 2-month classroom in the morning, and then you go to a different construction site during the day, during the afternoon, and work on one house would be you'd do electric, another house you'd do roofing, another house you'd be pouring a foundation, and that would change every day. And I went for the class, as I said, which was 2 months, and I ended up staying in Maine for 5 years. I just fell in love with it.
Oh, and were you doing construction the whole time?
And went to work, yes, but went to work for, I worked for a wonderful construction group there, but went to work for Baradoff Galleries in Portland, which is still in existence.
Doing sales kind of thing?
Yes, and they didn't want to pay me.
How have you?
And
they didn't want to pay you?
They said, we'd love to have you with us, but you have to, if you can earn your keep, you can stay with us.
Yes.
And that worked out. And I stayed for a while, not long.
And
but
so
I loved Maine.
And what were you selling at that?
Well, they did the auctions
at
that time, but whatever came in the door. And in Maine,
everything came in the door.
It did.
Yeah.
You never knew. You could see a Hartley one day, and of course all those wonderful Homers are at the museum. Just that was about 4 doors down from Baradoff at the time.
And so that was your first exposure to actually doing buying and selling of art.
It was.
And clearly you must have found that intriguing or interesting.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. So at that point when you leave Maine and well, let me just ask you, just step back. When you go, how old are you when you have this kind of really, I would call a midlife crisis in a weird way?
30s,
Yeah, kind of mid to late.
mid to late 30s.
Yeah, okay. So you're now in your 40s, and do you leave there thinking, okay, I'm going to go back into the art world? Because something drew you back to the West.
Yes, it did. And it was my son Morgan turning 14. And he had been living with his mother, spending summers with me in Maine. He worked for a lobsterman pulling traps, and used to complain about getting up at 3:30 in the morning.
That's a hard
And
job.
I said, Morgan, you're going to remember these days with great affection. And he's 52 now, 52, 53.
Yeah.
He's the one that became a Navy SEAL for 8 years.
Yeah.
And he says, well, I'll finish my thought. Where were we on? You said...
Yeah, what brought you back to the West?
Yes, he turned 14. Thank you.
Yeah.
He turned 14. His mother said he could come and live with me at the time. And I decided I didn't want him to come to Maine. I would come back out to Arizona.
Yeah, spend more time, easier, everything.
Yeah.
And so did you go to Phoenix or Tucson?
No, Tucson.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Uh-huh.
And so you get back here, and what's your plan? Or do you have one?
I did. I opened a little frame shop gallery
Yes.
on Grant Road, rented from George Goebel. You know
Yeah.
the Goebel family? George's interior design firm I rented from him. It was a complex of about 3 little buildings on Grant Road, and I had the front.
And you were going to do framing and then sell
Framing
art?
and all I had at the time were some botanicals. And from there it just began growing.
And so when it started growing, what were you selling? Were you selling contemporary art at all, or deceased, or just anything that came in?
It was pretty much all older things.
Yeah.
Mark.
No one was really doing that at that time probably here either, was it? Was this kind of a late 80s time frame?
Yes, that's exactly when it was. Yeah.
I mean, Stewart probably was in business at that point.
And Rosequist.
Yeah, of course, Rosequist.
Rosequist would have been.
Yeah, they were still in business. And so do you remember when you got your first Dixon? Did it come during this period, or was that a little later?
That had to have been right at about that time.
Yeah.
I think I moved to Campbell Avenue after about 2 years. The owners of the Kaibab shop, and you probably knew them from he became partners with Ray Dewey.
Yep.
Yeah. And I leased...
Kaufman was his name. That's Kaufman Dewey.
Was it Kaufman?
Yep.
I'm trying to think of her name, his wife.
I don't know, but
she's still here.
Yeah, she's still alive.
Yeah. What was his first name?
I can't remember at this
Can't
moment.
remember,
That's
yeah.
good. Good to know that that I can't remember everything too.
Thank you.
But I can remember one of his Maynard Dixon paintings.
And
that I
was,
can remember.
And there were 3 Dixons that came at once, and I could go through the books and show them to you. And they were owned by the singer
Ronstadt's.
the Ronstadt family.
Yes.
Yes, there were 3. They were small, 10 by maybe 12 by 16 or 10 by 14. They were all little adobes. And that was the beginning.
Did you have a clue of who he was at that point?
Oh, yeah.
You did.
Oh, yeah.
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 At some point.
And then you began, I just
Yeah,
developed a passion.
yeah, you started investigating.
And
He has a connection to Tucson.
yes,
He also has this ability to do some modernistic kind of sensibilities. He's got everything
Yeah.
that you and I both see in him.
yeah.
You know,
And draftsman. I mean, those drawings
yeah,
that
just
you have,
everything,
he was just,
yeah. And so the name of the gallery was it Mitchell Brown at that time?
it's always been Mitchell Brown.
Yeah,
When I went up to, I had a man that wanted to be a partner.
yeah.
That was Duncan.
All right.
And he wanted to move up to Santa Fe.
Right.
And we did that. We moved up to Santa Fe.
And did you close Mitchell Brown Fine Art here in Tucson? And
Yes, we did.
And you went up
It
to
was
Santa Fe?
100%. Yeah, we moved up.
Yeah. And what year would have that been when you moved up to Santa Fe? Early 90s?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I would think something like that. And where did you open your gallery in Santa Fe?
Right from the start, it was one building off Canyon Road behind the old schoolhouse. That's pretty low on Canyon Road,
Yes.
just south of where you were there.
Yes.
It was Linda Durham's at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you get there in the early 90s. It was a good time to be in Santa Fe.
Great time to be there.
A lot of things going
and we
on.
we did a big Dixon show that the author that
Don Haggerty.
That
probably would have
helped with.
been associated with that show that he had in like 92, 93.
Yes.
That
and
also
the
went
first
to
book
yeah, Desert Dreams, and went to had an exhibit at the Santa Fe Fine Arts Museum as well.
Yes.
And that was probably at that time. So it was a perfect timing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just the perfect time. And at that point, did you go, okay, I'm going to handle all comers, but I want to have an emphasis on Dixon?
I don't think it was a rational decision in that way.
Yeah.
I loved his work and I was learning about it, and we kind of became known for, gosh, if you go in there, you might see a Dixon or
Right.
two. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I know. Back in the days when you could easily find a Dixon or two.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
A little harder now.
indeed.
For everything. Not just Dixon, but
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
You know, you just can go down the line, including
Yes.
Fritz Shoulder. You know?
You know so well, Swirls at Sunset.
Yeah, right.
30 by 25, 1925.
Yep.
We sold that painting 3 times.
Yeah.
That's just an example of the way
Right.
things would come back, and it's permanent now, and it's privately owned now in Phoenix,
Yep.
and yeah, I'm sure it'll go to a museum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the great ones, in my opinion. I
Yeah,
had it in my
it's
gallery.
one of the great landscapes.
Yeah. And I had it in my gallery on exhibit a couple different times.
Did you?
Yeah. When Coates would loan it for shows that I
Yeah,
had.
that's right.
Yeah. And it's the interesting thing I think about that is, and maybe you can speak to it because you've owned it 3 times. You had it the first time. First time you had it, it was, you clearly recognize it a great painting. I clearly recognize it a great painting, but it was not an easy sell at the first go around, or at least, right? It took a little while.
Mark, I wish I could remember.
Yeah.
It certainly didn't have the draw that it would now.
Oh, yeah.
And particularly with people that understand his work,
Right.
that have a sense of how wonderful that picture is.
Right.
Even from a...
It's one of my favorites.
It's one of my landscape favorites.
So that tells you something just in that. But yeah, my recollection is when you first had it, it was, we were too far advanced for the public, and
that composition with
that's amazing. I've sat in front of it many times for
yes,
a long
of
period
course.
of time.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right. I've had one painting I've sold 3 times. One Dixon I've sold 3 times, and this one up here above on my wall I've had a couple of times. First bought it from you, actually.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. And then I sold it. I didn't want to sell it because I love it because it's the Catalina Mountains, and I sold it in my '96 show. and then ended up buying it back at double the price because I wanted it. Then I could afford to keep it. And so I have. I've had it for whatever, 20 plus year, 25 years maybe, I don't know, a long time. But there are paintings like that. I'm sure you've had some that you wish you maybe even, I think you're a better dealer in some respects than I am because you're able to sell things and not hang on to them.
I wish I could afford to hang on to them.
But, I mean, as a dealer, that is your job, right, is to buy and sell things, and it's not to hoard. I'm more in the Alan Stone kind of jib of cloth because I find myself really still being a collector. I can't help myself, and I've always been that way, and that's why I guess I've been able to put the Dixon Museum together because I didn't – pieces that were easy to sell, I didn't sell because I just felt a compulsion to want to hang on to them.
It's remarkable what you've done, Mark.
Yeah,
it's remarkable to walk through all that. Really, it truly is.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some old. Well, I know there's some old friends.
Oh yeah,
there's at least one in there. I know I bought from you. So
yeah,
which I was thrilled to get.
It's very
quite
exciting
frankly.
to come in and see them.
So you do was it called Mitchell Brown Duncan or Mitchell Duncan?
It was Mitchell Brown Duncan.
Yes,
and. We did a poster that has Duncan's name on it. It's the Navajo, 1915.
Yeah, I remember it very well.
Yeah, and that's a painting I've always loved. And, Mark, composition and art and all so well. What Dixon did in that, and instead of having the negative space in front of the horse,
he put it in the back.
he had the horse right on over to the right and negative space behind him.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it is a great 2030.
Yeah,
amazing painting. So that was the poster that you did using that one.
That had Duncan's name on it. Yeah.
And so, how long did that last?
It was a short time.
Yeah, and so being art dealers is tough. It's always tough. I think we're independent kind of individuals, and it's it's hard to, especially if you have vision of what you want, what you should buy, what you should not buy, what your, goals are. They're very specific often. And I know they are for me, and I'm sure they were for you. So that didn't last. You moved on. You both moved on, I guess. And so what did you do then? Did you stay in Santa Fe? Or did you go private at that point? Or was it a combo?
I stayed in Santa Fe and went private.
Yeah.
Janet and I had built a house out in south of town. I'm trying to think of it was a 18-mile drive back and forth. But we built a wonderful adobe that.
Such a beautiful area there.
It's all built up out there, but it was so beautiful. We used to. There were barbed wire fences, and we'd leave salt lick on the other side, and the antelope would come in. We'd see the antelope come in. But that's all changed now. But it was a wonderful house, and as you know very well, we've both done the same thing in having galleries there, and you never get Santa Fe 100% out of your blood. No, it's true. I was there for 20 years on Canyon Road. Yeah,
straight up 20.
Yeah.
Though I love visiting Santa Fe, I love going to it. I'm from New Mexico, so there's something there. Clearly, I still feel as if I'm a New Mexican, regardless, and that will never change, I guess.
Yeah.
But I will say that it's nice not having to go and work all summer long, work here through May and then work another straight 4 months.
Yeah.
And have more of an opportunity to actually enjoy the city for what it is and the art.
What is your age now, Mark?
I'm 63.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm now considered to be one of the old guards. Which is really weird since you knew me when I was.
But you started early.
Yeah, I did. I started when I was 32. But you've known me so long that it's probably even weird for you to go. Yeah, God, he doesn't. How can he be an old guard? And if he's an old guard, what am I?
Yeah, exactly.
So you did private deals
out of our home.
And so, how did you like that compared to being a gallerist with an open retail space?
They both have their advantages and disadvantages. It suited me. It suited my purse. It suited my personality.
Yeah, I can see that.
I liked it. And I found, Mark, that when someone would come out to the house, I can think of several people that expressed this at one time or another. We could sit down in the living room, have a coffee, have a glass of wine, depending on the time of day, even have a meal. And I would be able to learn about them and what their interest was, what their degree of exposure was, and so forth, and then develop a long-term relationship, which is really what happened. Our clients are all over the country. We don't have clients out of the country, but they're all over the country.
How do you develop new clients now at this point? Or, I mean, you're still dealing, right?
Yes. I don't do anything to do it. And when I get a call from someone that is someone I don't know, they always say so-and-so suggested I call you. And as you know very well, very frequently, someone will call and say, I have this Maynard Dixon, and it has your sticker on the back.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they go online and find out where you are. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So now you've been doing this as a business for probably close
45
to,
years.
I was going to say, 40 years, 45 years. Yeah. And so you're now primarily located in Paradise Valley and Bend, but most of and you work when you're in Bend too, or no? You just when you're in Phoenix?
No, only on my phone and on computer.
And you did have a space in Phoenix for quite a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful space.
Yeah, I remember going to it. Actually.
Yeah. Were you at the upstairs one or the one that was?
No.
There was one. The first one was on under the clock tower in Phoenix. And then when the canal series of buildings,
I think I've been to both. I think I was to both of them.
The upstairs one I loved.
Yeah,
because we designed it from scratch.
Yeah, that's
and
fine.
We owned it. We owned that section of the building, and it was fun. It was like a New York gallery. You take the elevator up,
right?
And it was just just the right colors. Everything was perfect.
Plus, we
loved it.
Keep people from off the street coming as much. It's really more of
their people are seriously
and they're coming. Yeah. And I see that for you. I see that as being your sweet spot to be able to, because you're a relationship person. So that makes sense. And I actually see myself as a gallerist with an open retail more suiting my whatever. I do. Yeah. Not that I don't like relationships and some of my best friends are my clients. I would say the artists are some of my greatest friends as well. That's the one thing the gallery has given me, I think, is being able to, really get to know artists and creative people. And that to me is like the joy of all joys.
Yeah.
So, but doing it out of my house and things like that, I don't see me doing it. I don't like people at my house, actually. So, right there alone, I'm in trouble.
Well, they almost, I would say now, it's, someone may come to the house, I don't know, 2 to 4 times a year.
Yeah.
Because it's all done in shipping and what have you. Or if they come to the house, they're friends anyway, and they're coming to dinner. And do you paint, Mark?
No, I've tried a little bit. It's very difficult to do something when what you look at is not good. Unfortunately, my eye is trained to see good. And I also know the amount of effort it takes to become either decent or, I'm sure I could become a decent artist. So what I do is I do some sculpture for myself and I do photography. So, which I enjoy a lot because I can do the composition like I can a painting, right? It just is innately set up in my brain and my way I see the world to set it up. And I've had lots of my artists go, "Oh, you should paint. You do it like a, like we do." And I go, "Yeah, well, compositionally wise, I do see it like painting.
Yeah,
but I can't. No. The answer is no. Mm-hmm. So I don't see that ever changing, other than maybe sculpture if I just had more time." But I think I'd rather spend it doing more things like this or writing. To me, I find it more interesting.
It's amazing. You're an amazing guy to be able to do all the things you do and write. You still get up early in the morning and write?
No, I usually write in the evening. Yeah,
you write in the evening?
Yeah, usually is what I do. Yeah,
I always have a glass of wine with dinner, and I'm not worth much afterwards.
Well, I think
if I have a little, even a single glass of alcohol, I'm done for the day.
Yeah, I don't drink really, so that takes that out of the picture.
Yeah, well, that's smart.
Not that I don't like it; I love the taste, but it's just I find it to do just like you said. It takes me out of the game.
Yeah.
So, and I want my time to be useful as much as I can. Not that, I find writing to be, when you're really creating, when you're not editing, I think it's very fun. It's extremely fun. Yeah. And I find this very fun, actually.
I want you to pick the book that you would have me read and sign it, and I want to take it home.
Yeah,
Janet and I both want to read. Yeah,
I hope it lives
Maybe
up
we'll
to.
End up,
you may change
through the whole series,
or you may change your opinion of, well, he's not really that creative, quite frankly. That's a pretty marginal book, but I'd be happy to do that. Now, let me ask you, kind of as we finish this up, you've been doing this for 45 years. You've pretty much specialized, I would say, in the Southwest Western material. Wouldn't you say that's true? As far as what you handle? I mean, you handle everything. Good dealers always do, but really more.
Well, we've in the last decade been doing a great deal with Wyeth family.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I put that in the more realism. It might not be Western.
Oh, realism as opposed to
modern art,
abstract.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yes. So where do you see our business in 10, 20
Oh,
years?
my goodness.
I know it's a tough question, but how do you see it changing?
I think that's a question I should be asking you. I think you would have a much better sense for that than I would. There's because you're dealing with artists on a daily basis and know lots of good ones, real artists. You have real artists. Ask Ed Mell where he thinks that's going. He's an example of what an extraordinary guy.
Yeah.
He has been painting that long, as you know, as well as I, and he can still do fresh work.
Oh, yeah.
That's unusual.
Yeah, I just got a great piece for my own collection. That was the Transcendental, that he's influenced by the Transcendental show that he saw.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, from Johansson and Bistrom and, all those guys. So he's still, pushing the boundaries and doing extremely successful. I think he's kind of the godfather of what's happening. Of what's going on now in the Western world. I think he's the basis of where the next generation is looking for their inspiration. And he looked toward Dixon. And of course, a lot of these other people look toward Dixon as well. But when you really come down and look at, the etiology of the, where this modern West is going, I have to say that it's firmly planted at Ed Mell's feet. So
I agree.
And I think we'll all look back at that and go, oh, yeah, he was the guy.
Yeah.
And you were in New York the same time he was, actually, when you were, he was doing, he just has everything, as well as being a wonderful human being, but he really just has all the components of that.
He is a wonderful human being. He's humble.
Oh, he's super humble. Yeah. Yeah. I think we've just touched the iceberg tip to how important he is in the field and where it's headed. So to answer your question to my question is, you know, I don't see Western art going away. I don't see native arts going away. I think it'll always be there. It is the only true, other than if you want to call abstract expressionism, it is the only true real American art form, right? Mm-hmm. When if you're in Japan or if you're in, you know, Germany, and you go, what's Western art? They're going to think of cowboys, Native American landscapes, deserts, you know.
It's true.
You know, that's our culture. That's America's culture. And so I think that will, I mean, look at Yellowstone, the TV show, or 1882. I mean, you know, Dances with Wolves before that.
Yes.
So I don't see it ever going away. I think there's always going to be interest. I think there will always be, it will probably come to more recognize how important this is as part of why I do these series in a weird way, though it's not really geared just for Western and Native arts, but it seems to be the majority of everything I talk about is that.
I love hearing you say that. It's a good summation, and it's a great example of it being stronger than ever.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. And I think things like Native Indigenous art has finally started to get the platitudes and the looks by the museums that it hasn't in the past. Yeah. And that's going to change things as well, even though, you know, like we talked about in our talk, you know, Shoulder was running to Taos to escape his fame, and that, you know, and this is like in the, you know, 80s, you know, so, and his paintings right now are bringing world record prices each time, you know, and it just continues to explode. It continues to gain traction. So I'm very hopeful, and I see a lot of very positive things, even though the generation that you and I dealt with may be de-accessing, going away from what they're doing or have done because they're at that age. I think millennials and then Gen Zs and all these are going, oh, this is really interesting. This is our culture.
Mark, I'd be curious what your feel or comment would be about who is right up there, what painters that are doing the genre that we're referring to that you feel are some of the best and will endure.
Yeah, I mean, no one knows, right? So you never can point to who that person is, though I will say Ed Mell will be one.
Yeah,
without a doubt in my mind.
No
but
question.
You have people like Kim Wiggins, who is doing phenomenal stuff that's really tapped into his, you know, culture, his being of, you know, growing up in southeastern New Mexico near Roswell. I mean, he's got that thing, you know, and you have on the more tighter end people like Martin Greeley who are doing their thing, you know, he's a Texan, you know, and so that goes the whole gamut from Greeley to Mel, and everything in between. And you have, you know, native artists like Tony Abeda, you know, Mateo Romero, Caro Romero, who does photography. I mean, you know, Shanto Begay, I think, is one of the top, you know, native artists that's working right now, Doug Hyde, you know, and so, you know, it's fun to see Howard Post. I mean, you want to talk about somebody who really is tied into his culture and what he does, third generation cowboy, but claimed painter, you know, has been showing the rodeo and the cowboy life, you know, for 45 years.
And you know, and his paintings are so unique.
So unique.
No one has attempted to copy those.
They can't.
Yeah.
Well, they can't on many levels because,
that's right.
You know, it comes from his color sense is just unique.
Yeah.
And, you know, also, if you've ridden a horse for 60 years, you have your own sensibility of that. You know, he's just now retiring from the rodeo world. Yeah. He told me the other day he came in, I think Howard would be okay with me sharing this, but he said, Mark, I'm a has-been. my horse is sick and I don't think I want to get another one.
Oh.
So, and I could see the pain in that, because that's part of who he is, even though he's a world-class painter. How do you tie that into anybody else as being somebody who has staying power?
I'm glad you shared that.
Yeah, is somebody like Howard Post. Yeah. So he was one of the first people to kind of look from the top of the perspective like Dixon did. This helicopter look down, and we're actually going to have a show for him in October that's just that. We're talking from a view from the top. And he got it because he's in the rodeo and he's sitting on top of the stalls and stuff, watching the bulls, looking at them and all that kind of stuff. How do you, that's original. So I think those individuals that have originality, those are the ones I mentioned and a lot more.
Yeah,
because there's a
he
lot
really
more.
stands out
Billy
for
Shank
me.
also original
Yeah.
in what he's done. There are individuals that, and they're all kind of pretty much fall into that group now that are in their 60s to 80s kind of time, So, and people like Greg Condos, who just passed away, who did, more Western California kind of things. But yeah, he trained with Wayne Thiebaud, or not trained, he was friends with Wayne Thiebaud, and he just a very important California artist who's now just passed, but you can see his paintings starting to explode, and he'll be one that will be well remembered for sure. Yeah. So, but again, you never know, right?
No, you don't.
Louisa McElwain, she's another one that's, has her own sensibilities. She's passed, but, she's going to be well remembered for what she does. So you think you would know as a dealer, having done it for many, many years. I can tell you, honestly, I don't think you really do.
No, and for so many years, Mark, people would say to me, Jeff, is there an artist that hasn't gotten as much attention as and they were referring to deceased.
Right.
And I've always thought that, and now the name has slipped, he was Santa Barbara.
Boreen.
No, not Boreen. Borg.
Borg, Oscar Borg, yeah.
Carl Oscar Borg.
Yeah.
And yet that market never changed.
Not yet.
And well, and when you look at across the whole field of work,
right,
it doesn't begin to have the variation that Dixon as an example.
Yeah, and if you look at Dixon in the 60s and 70s, he was kind of under the radar, really gone sideways. It wasn't until really, I think, the 80s and then the 90s that he really started to find, part of that was because Edith Hamlin kept on it. People like yourself, had shows and recognized it. All those kind of things. Don Haggerty writing books, those kind of things brought him. I mean, he was always. I mean, he was a superstar when he was alive. I mean, he really was.
Yeah,
and he did amazing things. But it just shows you don't know. That if you looked at him in the 60s and 70s, or even maybe early 80s, you might have gone, I don't know if he'll. He's really interesting and great, but I don't know. And then, 10 years later, 20, So Fritz Scholder's work, same kind of thing, really. The price structure really didn't do much until 2 years ago.
Well, actually went way down.
Yeah, it did, actually. Yeah. There was a period it did go down.
And then,
People find it, shows happen, Denver Art Museum, Phoenix Art Museum, books are written, scholars come upon it. They start to realize, oh my God, this is a person like Ed Mell who is at the forefront of what he's doing, another person I didn't mention though, but I think we forget to mention these are people like Kelly Moyers too, and John Moyers. Women artists I think are going to have a much more important
and should
role. Yeah. Jill Carver, another one. Yeah, I think that you can't just think Western native and being only men, because I think that's changing as well. And it should. Vero Goodnight, what a career she's had. So, I mean, we got a little bit off the subject because really the subject's you and not the other stuff. But you asked the questions, I'm going to answer. Anything else before we close up that you want to say or
I want
comment?
to say thank you and how much I've enjoyed sitting here with you, Mark.
Yeah,
and
me too.
sharing, getting to know you better through you asking me questions.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. I think you're an important person in our business. I think you had a substantial role in Dixon as well, and that it's important that you're recognized for, your accomplishments and contributions to this.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Jeff Mitchell, Art Dealer Diaries. Thank you. All right. Now I'll go sign that book for you. All right.
Good.